And now from Washington, the Inside Scoop. All the news the government does not want you to hear. Now, here's your host on the Inside Scoop, Mark Levine.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. We often talk about our oil addiction. We didn't used to talk about it. In fact, when Jimmy Carter first started talking about alternative energy sources in the 1970s, people thought he was a little loopy. We didn't adopt his proposals then, and we went back into relying on oil into the 80s and the 90s. But now we seem to realize that our oil addiction is costly, not just in terms of money, but in terms of foreign policy. Why are we in the Middle East? Why do we care about the Middle East? Largely, it's because of oil. We also know that oil causes global warming, that burning all these fossil fuels causes our planet to heat up. And if you didn't believe it, I have a movie to recommend for you. It just won an Oscar. It's called An Inconvenient Truth, sponsored by our former Vice President, Al Gore. The three gentlemen sitting to my right today are all working to help provide to us alternatives to oil, alternatives that are more efficient, that are cleaner, and that help to decrease our reliance on fossil fuels. Sitting to my immediate right is Dr. Andrew Poring. Now, Dr. Poring is an amazing scientist. He is the founder of Sonics Research. He's been in charge of that company for more than 25 years now. He's an inventor. He holds, 14, 15 patents. He'll tell you. But this is a guy who actually can design another way to make an engine. A totally different way from the way you run your car. We're going to talk about that and how that happens. Sitting to his right is Morris Meyer. Morris Meyer you're going to hear a lot about because he's running to be a delegate in Fairfax County, Virginia. But here he's going to talk about the political angle. Why is it that we don't have these alternatives to oil that have worked in other countries like Brazil? Why don't we have them? What can we do politically at the federal level, at the state level to make that happen? And sitting to his right is Al Weed. Now, Al Weed is a farmer from Loviston, Virginia, which is about 2.5 hours from here. But he's actively working through grassroots organizations like the ones he developed called Public Policy Virginia to establish alternatives to oil. And the main one that he's working on is something called switchgrass. It's amazing that we could actually grow our own alternative to oil. Gentlemen, welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Dr. Poring, Andy, you told me to call you Andy, so I will. Let me start with you. You actually have been working at designing engines differently so they don't have to have oil.
To the extent that the combustion chamber of the engine is changed. The objective of our work has always been, since the first graduate student that started this work, is to burn the fuel efficiently, get the most out of it, get the most work out of it, but at the same time with the least emissions. Okay? And that
so it's cleaner and
yes.
more efficient. But you don't need petroleum.
No. We've been able to burn, with some of the older engines, we've been able to burn anything that is ignitable.
Anything that's ignitable. Now, in Brazil, my understanding is some 40% of their fleet runs on sugarcane. Is that right?
I'm not sure of the figures, but I know that's
that's what I've heard.
Yeah, massive amounts.
So could you use sugarcane in your process?
Not sugarcane, but the alcohol that's made from it.
The alcohol that's made from sugarcane.
Sure, yeah.
How about ethanol made from corn? Farmers in Iowa.
Same.
Same thing.
We have used ethanol, methanol, liquefied coal on some of the older with the old engine, delaminine, which is the oil from the skins of citrus fruits.
I can take oranges. I mean, you mean the skins that I throw away?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't eat the skin.
You have to squeeze them real hard.
You have to squeeze them real hard, but that's a waste product,
yeah.
And you can use that to make an engine.
Not to make an engine.
To make to make an engine run. I know not to make an engine. I'd hate to make it out of orange peels. That would be difficult.
Yeah. Of course, there's a wide range of our technologies that go back to the time that this all started at the Naval Academy when I was on the faculty there, and the name of the engine then was the Nobby.
Why the Nobby?
Naval Academy Heat Balanced Engine.
So this goes way back.
This goes way back.
1960s, 1970s?
72 is when the graduate students started this program in a joint program between the University of Maryland, George Washington University, and the Naval Academy. Okay.
I'm going to get back to you. Let me skip over Mars for now and go to Al Weed. Now, one of the products that you've been working on that can help make Andy's engine work is switchgrass. What is switchgrass?
Well, switchgrass is actually a native grass. It was probably what was on the Great Plains when
It's
the
a weed, in other words.
Well, no, it's a native grass, but weed, you can call it a weed.
Grows,
sure.
but you don't need to have, I mean, it grows naturally.
It's a perennial, so once it's established, it doesn't need to be replanted every year. And as a crop that will be used for biomass to create fuel, we expect that the yields will be such that farmers will find it very attractive. We figure with given technology, without any plant selection, we can get about 10 tons per acre. And the current technology for converting switchgrass to ethanol is about 100 gallons per ton. So you're talking 1,000 gallons per acre.
1,000 gallons per acre. Now, each of these gallons, with the right car, I can stick it right in my car.
Precisely. Well, ethanol in this country, they're blending it 15. The highest blend is 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline.
So 85%.
Yeah.
So in other words, if I got like an 18-gallon tank, 15 gallons of it could be with ethanol grown right here in the United States of America, and I get 1,000 tons per acre. That sounds like it's quite competitive with oil.
1,000 gallons. Yes, it is very competitive.
All right, so now I got to turn to the politician here, because Morris Meyer, we have an engine that can use alternatives to oil. We got a farmer that can grow the alternatives to oil at very competitive prices. What is wrong with our government? Why aren't they allowing this inventor and this farmer to get us away from Saudi Arabia, away from Iraq, and run it ourselves?
Currently in the world, we're using a cubic mile of oil, which is powering our cars and our transportation system. And there's $1 trillion a year industry behind that. And there's one of the things we need to do politically is shift the way we fuel our cars in our cities. And one of the things I'd like to do for Virginia is a renewable portfolio standard that puts cleaner and greener fuel systems into Virginia so that we can grow our own fuel, we can capture our own electricity on our houses with solar, and then we can do offshore wind from Massachusetts to the Carolinas.
Well, let me back up.
And power our
cities. What we
cities.
can do. Why haven't we done this already? I mean, Andy says it's been around since 1972. Al can grow the switchgrass. Why can't I go to my filling station in Alexandria, Virginia, and pour some ethanol in, made from switchgrass, into Andy's engine and make my car go?
You already are pouring ethanol into your gas. It's actually a replacement for one of the anti-pollution devices. But scaling it up from a few percent of our fuel mix to 80% of our fuel mix takes a lot of research. If we were going to convert all of the United States to ethanol from corn, we'd convert all our crops to basically fuel. That would give us 15%, say. But what we need to do is we need to shift our research towards ethanol from switchgrass and other wood fiber and that kind of thing, so that we're not taking food off our plates to fuel our cars. And ethanol
So we need more research, is what you're saying, to get better efficiency here.
Right. One of the things I'd like to do is have our government or have our state government invest in Virginia Tech and UVA to provide the research and the science to take ethanol from the research to production. So we help Virginia farmers and we help get off foreign oil.
Let me go back then to Andy, the state of the research. I mean, does it still need a lot of work to do this kind of stuff?
Well, the basic research is done and the fundamentals are there. The difficulty is to get it to production. I have gone through the entire cycle one time, and I know how much work it is to calibrate a car for emission cycles, and also go through all of the types of tests that must be done that ensure that the car is always going to run. All of the
So you have made a working car based on this alternative engine?
We converted the engine of the car, yes.
Right, no, I understand. But in other words, you have an engine based entirely on your model that runs a car and is as reliable as the internal combustion engine that we're used to.
In the first generation of this technology. We're now into, I'm not sure, maybe fifth to sixth generation of this technology. We do not have a car, but we have engines that are running, actually funded by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. It's a 6-cylinder engine. It was converted.
So the military's doing this already?
The military's doing it. We have not had a finger lifted by any other government agency to help us. Department of Energy,
They'll do it for defense, but they won't do it for the consumer. Al, you've actually begun a grassroots organization to try to fight this politically, right?
Well, what we've tried to do is identify where the public policy hurdles are. Your question, why can't we do it? I mean, the fundamental answer to that, Mark, is that oil has been too cheap for us to invest in the alternative sources of transportation and fuel. And it hasn't been until this last rise, which is maybe now 18 months since we saw oil go over $50 a barrel, that there has been some confidence that it probably won't drop below that, so that the floor is in place for people to make intelligent investment decisions. I mean, a switchgrass crop, for example, will take 3 years to come to full production. So no farmer wants to forego the income that comes from those fields otherwise if he's not sure at the end of 3 years there's actually going to be a market for what he's growing. And I think it's only in this beginning of the 21st century that all the pieces are really starting to come together. And so there's a great deal of interest. I mean, Morris is not the only candidate running talking about moving the state forward, and Congress is doing good things about it. Even the president is talking about switchgrass.
What is Congress doing about it? I'm curious.
Well, in the last energy bill of 2005, there was a fair amount of money set aside for alternative and renewable energy. Department of Energy just this last week announced specifically $6 billion in grants for ethanol production from cellulosic material, from material other than corn. And so
cellulosic material.
Well, all matter, or all
Cellulose,
organic matter is made up of cells.
Okay, all right.
And so you're really talking about converting the actual structure of the plant into starches so that you can then ferment it into ethanol, which is the steps we make on it. So you can make cellulosic ethanol from wood chips, from animal waste, from just about anything that is organic.
From switchgrass.
Well, the point
the thing is, I mean, animal waste. I mean, I can't think of a better place. Instead of throwing it away,
Well,
you can actually use it.
Do you know there is a plant that's producing a diesel-type fuel from turkey guts?
Great.
It's out in Missouri.
I throw this stuff away. I had no idea it was that useful.
No, but it's actually a sizable production. I mean,
Really?
enough that it's a marketable product.
Morris, let me ask you, because you ran in Congress against the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Joe Barton. Do you think Congress is doing enough? And if not, what should Congress be doing in addition to what they're doing?
We're still, we've started to take a shift with this, the shift in chairmanships from Republican to Democratic hands. We've started to take, in the 2004 Congress, they spent $11 billion on giving tax breaks to oil companies.
$11 billion
Right.
to oil companies.
And
how much was spent on this alternative energy?
It's
$6 billion was what DOE just announced the other day.
$6 billion.
Yeah.
So it takes a long period of time to turn an ocean liner around, and
Well,
I think
also, but twice as much on oil subsidies as on our future. I mean, here ExxonMobil had the largest profit of any corporation in American history, and my tax dollars are going to ExxonMobil instead of going to farmers to produce switchgrass and Andy's research to do engines.
And our government has taken forward-looking effects before, to creating the ARPANET, putting a man on the moon, to semiconductor research, and I think we've gotten away from that vision and sort of looked at the here and the now, quarter by quarter. And I think the problems with oil getting above $60 a barrel, of the Middle East strife and trying to stabilize that situation. We've seen global warming starting to kick in. That these sorts of challenges are motivating towards cleaner and greener solutions, and a lot of companies are starting to make money from this. Walmart is investing $500 million a year in energy efficiency, and their payback's 23 months. Walmart's not going to throw money at anything just to have fun with it. They're actually, they're the king of the penny pinchers, and they're turning a profit on cleaner energy. And I think government is starting to get on the program as well.
And Marsh, you make a good point when you talk about our troops in the Middle East. Al was talking about the cost of oil. One of the things that's never factored into the cost is the cost in money and lives of our men and women going over there, largely to protect oil companies. It's a very expensive endeavor, and it's far more expensive than the cost of your gas pumps. Folks, this is a live show. We encourage you to call in and let your voice be heard. Got a question for any of our eminent guests? It's easy to do. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We'd like to hear from you, and we'll be right back after this.
History has demonstrated that violence only begets greater violence, and injustice only begets greater injustice. This is not the tradition of our great nation. This is not how we want the United States to be known around the world. We have another tradition that we think ought to prevail. One that is more just and more powerful. There is a better way. If we truly want peace and security, then we must work hard for justice. If you're concerned that we've become a nation whose national policies are grounded in beliefs that are centered on a line embedded in BS, then don't miss Escape from Orwellia Nation, a talk show in which concerned regular citizens like you and me, not self-serving media spinmeisters, wade through the barrage of newspeak and doublethink that pollutes public discourse today. Big Brother, big business, big media, and the big national parties who collude to keep we the people afraid and in the dark would prefer that you not watch. Show them who's in charge. Tune in to Escape from Orwellia Nation right here on Channel 10.
From Washington, back to the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We're discussing tonight alternatives to oil. That's right. We can actually wean ourselves away from fossil fuels and maybe even bring our troops home from Iraq. Sitting to my right is the eminent inventor and scientist, Dr. Andrew Poring, the aspiring House of Delegates candidate who's focused on energy fuels, Mars Meyer. And to him right is a farmer from Southern Virginia who has organized his own public policy grassroots organization to push for alternative fuels, Al Weed.
Whose son, by the way, thank goodness, is on his way back from Iraq, is in Kuwait right now, and should be flying home into Virginia in a day or two.
Wow,
So we're behind that.
That's exciting, and hopefully we can bring them all home soon. Of course, one of the reasons why I believe, and I've argued for years, that we are there has nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction or Al-Qaeda, but has to do with the fact that it provides very cheap oil to our oil companies. If it were we cared about dictatorship or genocide, we'd be in Darfur right now. So I don't think that's the reason we're there. And one of the reasons why I'm glad all three of you are committed to this cause is because in addition to the cost of oil that Al Weed mentioned, there's this excess cost of lives and American lives, Iraqi lives, wounded, hundreds of billions of dollars that doesn't get factored into our oil prices, but is definitely a cost of owing so much of our
taken away from our schools and our roads and our
the
colleges.
way we use energy, we owe it to these people in the Middle East. I just assume get out, let them fight amongst themselves. Andrew, you have shown for us a new kind of engine. You have it out there, or at least a part of a new kind of engine. I don't know if it's a piston or what. I don't know what I'm looking at.
Well, this is probably a fifth or sixth generation of this whole works. The whole key to this whole story is to have a direct injected engine. That means I have an injector here. Okay.
What are you injecting? Fuel?
Fuel, whatever it is.
Okay.
Because we can use ethanol,
Switchgrass.
methanol. No, we've got to turn it into alcohol first.
Oh, okay. So switchgrass becomes alcohol, and then you send
right.
it in. All right.
Yeah, but a direct injected engine, like a diesel, okay, has an injector,
right,
and it has sprays coming out from the injector. Okay, the whole objective is to have spray come out and hit these what we call microchambers.
Yeah,
okay?
they're tiny.
They're tiny, yeah. They're about an inch long,
Okay.
about a quarter of an inch in diameter, and they have one connecting hole.
Okay.
So some of the fuel has to go through that hole and get into the chamber, and a reaction takes place.
A chemical reaction.
Chemical reaction takes place.
So it doesn't burn like
No.
when I think of an internal combustion engine, I think of a little fires,
Yeah,
little sparks.
but it doesn't run unless it burns here. Okay.
I see.
So first of all, the first cycle wouldn't burn. So you have to have some fuel coming in, like ether or whatever.
So you have a chemical in there that
No,
what does
it's
it do?
the fuel.
How's the alcohol change?
The fuel comes in,
Right.
is sprayed in,
Yeah.
and it reacts in the chamber and goes through what's called pre-flame reactions. It just starts
What
to
causes it to make that reaction?
because it's compressed.
I
You know,
see.
you've squeezed it together in
The
the
pressure
cylinder.
of
The
squeezing.
pressure, right. So, and with the pressure comes temperature, and it starts the reaction going. But you don't want it to go off in the chamber, okay, because it's all over then. So we've learned how to design these chambers so there's a partial reaction, and it provides the feedstock for the next engine cycle. And
It's interesting. I know the way they developed atomic bomb was you have like one explosion does a bigger explosion,
Yeah.
and that does a bigger explosion.
Well, there's an element of that. But for many years, many people said, that's black magic. Get out of here. You know, that type
They
of
didn't
reaction.
believe you that it could work.
No, but now thanks to one of my ex-students, Dr. Dave Blank, who did all of the chemistry analytically, showing how the reactions take place in there, how they get into the chamber, and how the whole combustion event starts. So it's no longer black magic. We have engines run on all these different fuels
How many
today.
patents do you have on this?
I've lost track. At least a dozen.
At
But
least a dozen patents. Now,
but-
where is this being used? You mentioned the military. They're actually using this right now?
No, the military through DARPA funded this particular piston. Now this is an adaptation of what's called a pent roof engine. The pent roof means it's got a roof like,
Sure.
like a pent there.
Penthouse.
A penthouse, correct. Underneath there it has these small chambers, okay? They are the reaction chambers that provide the feedstock. This is not the right way to make it. We just had to adapt and show DARPA that we could take a Subaru engine and turn it from a spark-ignited engine into a direct injected
So this is the
diesel
way to
fuel
make
engine.
it. This is the way you adjusted it to an ordinary car.
To an ordinary car, but the next step is, now that we've demonstrated, yes, it works, you can run this engine now that used to be a spark-ignited engine. Spark is gone now, okay? And it's not high pressure. It's the same pressure, more or less, that the engine had with the spark plug. So that means you can make a very lightweight engine that's going to be diesel-like.
I'm not even
But-
need my battery anymore.
No, you got to turn it over. You got to
Oh,
get
okay,
it
gotta have
started.
the battery.
Yeah, but the whole point is, though, that this is just a step on the way. The next step, we are doing that now. Right now, we are turning this kind of a piston into this kind of a piston. That is to change, because this is not really the proper gem. This is a make-do type of
I understand.
design.
Now, what would you need in order to mass market this and start putting it in all American cars? I mean, it would run fuel.
No, we can't do it all. We're a group of
I
five,
don't
four
mean you
people.
personally,
No.
but why isn't this being done? You developed this technology. Why
It's-
isn't GM buying this and putting it in
Okay.
American cars? Maybe I should ask the politician that question.
No, but wait a minute. Let me just tell you that when we approach General Motors or Ford, particularly Ford,
Yeah.
we've had a very good relationship with Ford.
Okay. Get with it,
but,
Ford.
But they always ask for a little more compelling data, okay? And when we had just had a single-cylinder engine, more compelling data. Now that they have the full report on this engine, they say more compelling data. And that's the way it is, because basically they want you to do the whole job. They want you to hand them the keys and take it for a spin.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right. By then, you could have your own car company. But I mean, the thing I don't understand is you've developed this technology. How long has this been around? This technology. I mean, you mentioned antecedents go back to 1972. But
No,
this technology is what, 5 years old, 10 years old?
No, this type of piston was first developed in 1988.
Okay, 88.
Yeah,
That's
and
still
we did
20 years
we did two
ago,
methanol
almost.
engines for this particular company.
Okay, now how does this different from hybrid technology?
Well, this is the engine that you can use in a hybrid. You could use this process in any hybrid engine.
Is this different from a Prius engine?
Well, the Prius engine, as I recall, is a gasoline engine,
Okay,
right?
so,
A spark ignited.
so it's the fuel that's different.
The fuel.
Prius uses gasoline more efficiently.
Yeah.
You don't even need gasoline.
No, I mean, we can use alcohol, ethanol, methanol, or actually gasoline. We've also shown that you can turn this whole thing around and make a gasoline diesel.
Now, what do you need from government to make this happen?
A good piece of money.
You need money, like the $6 billion. You need a lot more in order to.
Yeah, but we
do the
don't need
research.
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
You know, for instance, a $5 million program could bring this to the
$5 million.
to the point
To
where
Congress, $5 million is like a couple pennies kicking out the door. I mean, $1 billion. They don't. I mean, $300 billion in Iraq. Okay, this is 100,000th of that cost. Just to give you an idea. Now, Al, you actually have designed a grassroots movement, I guess, to lobby state legislators, federal legislators, to do this kind of stuff.
Well, what we found when we got into this was there was a lot of research going on around biofuels, if you will, and a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of ways to get farmers to be interested in it, a lot of ways to find the refining technology, a lot of ways to develop the market. Farming is essentially a supply and demand business. Farmers will plant something if there's a demand for it, but in the case of refining biofuels, nobody's going to build a refinery to make ethanol out of switchgrass until there's enough switchgrass to supply the refinery.
It's a chicken and egg thing.
Precisely.
I mean, you're not going to have a refinery until you have the switchgrass, and the farmers aren't going to grow the switchgrass unless they know they can make a profit out of it.
That's
So
exactly.
you need someone to start the ball rolling.
That's where the public policy comes in. Where does the government play a role? And it's not only, what we're trying to do is not only identify the sort of things that the legislature can get a handle on, but we're also looking at incentive systems that would, one, cause farmers to plant this new crop. Two, a big deal is to make sure it's concentrated, because transportation, actual movement of a bulk crop,
Sure, you want it all
becomes
to
a
be
big
grown
issue.
in a
Yeah, you
general
got to have
area.
it close to the area. There's private money out there for this. I mean,
We shouldn't have to have private money. This is a
no, I mean-
public need.
I mean, if you create the supply, there's private investment capital to build the refineries. The government just is acting as a catalyst, should be acting as a catalyst. So what we're trying to do is find out the very question you asked: why aren't we doing it? And you'd be surprised. I had lunch dinner last night with a man who runs a bulk oil business in Norfolk. He supplies the Navy and much of the maritime trade that goes out of the biggest port and one of the biggest ports on the East Coast. And he said, you know, we used to be able to sell biodiesel, and we mixed it in with our ordinary petroleum, and they changed the standards.
You know what? I want you to hold that thought because we have to take a break, folks. The toll-free number, if you want to join in, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We'll be right back with how they changed the biodiesel standards right after this.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
My name is David Bell. I am a resident of Virginia's 11th Congressional District, and I ask Representative Tom Davis to initiate or support investigations into violations of the law by President Bush and his administration.
Tom Davis, my name is Jean Reynolds, and I'm one of your constituents. I want you to join immediately with other members of Congress to begin an investigation of the criminal acts that George Bush has committed.
I'm Nick Spengler of Ashland, Virginia, and I would like our troops to come home and Bush to get out of office.
My name is Nancy Maynard. I live in the 11th Congressional District, and this message is for Tom Davis. I'm asking you to please investigate for impeachment.
My name is Bruce Smith. I live in the 11th Congressional District in Woodbridge, Virginia. I want Congressman Davis to support the investigation of President Bush and Vice President Cheney and those that foisted this war on us.
Hello, Congressman Davis. I'm Carrie Plonson from the 11th Congressional District, and I'd like you to take immediate action to investigate George Bush and his offenses in leading this country into a war that's unwarranted and there is no solution for.
We have to impeach. I am just appalled that we would not, quote, waste our time with impeachment. The message to the world has to be that Bush and Cheney are guilty of international war crimes about which we can't do anything. We can do a lot about the crimes committed within the U.S. Constitution.
From Washington, back to the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. There are alternatives to oil. There are alternatives to the internal combustion engine. It's just a matter of getting our politicians behind it. We have the eminent scientist here who's explained how it's worked, and now I'm talking with Al Weed. You formed Public Policy Virginia, and you were just saying before the break why it is through the government that we're not using this kind of stuff. They changed the standards. Explain.
Well, as I said, this gentleman, it was interesting. When I started talking about what I'm interested in is weaning us off oil,
right.
His wife was sitting next to him and said, we've made a very comfortable living from oil. I mean, that's their business, but we need to do it. I mean, they both understand the environmental impacts of what they've done. And so he was telling me how he used to blend biodiesel. There's a biodiesel plant in Virginia. He used to blend that in with the bulk oil that he sold to ships. And they recently changed the standards. It has to do with the acidity of the fuel, but they recently changed it and basically said no more biofuels, even though the biofuel mix meets the standards. They just eliminated that. So that's,
no, wait. Who changed the standards?
Well, wasn't clear to me, and that's one of the things I want to follow up.
State government, federal government?
He can no longer sell it. No, it's probably federal standards promulgated through the Coast Guard because they don't want ships going, stumbling at sea because the fuel is wrong. And he's selling to the Navy. It could be the Defense Department that changes.
Would this fuel make ships stumble at sea?
I don't think so. They've actually tested biodiesel in B-52s.
Right.
And they work. I mean, that's probably the last place you want to be testing a fuel you're not absolutely sure. Because you just can't pull over to the side of the road.
A ship, will just stop. But a plane.
So and he's just mystified by it. He said we were selling it for 5 years. Never had a single problem with it, and now we can no longer sell it.
I wonder how much of this is involved with politics. Mars, you ran against Joe Barton, the chairman of the Energy Commerce Committee. And now, he gets a lot of money from oil companies. Is that fair to say?
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he gets it, and he ships back $11 billion. So that's actually quite a lot of return on your money. You give $1 million to a candidate, you get back $6 billion. If I could get 6,000 times on my money, I put $100 in and $600,000 comes out. That's a great return. When you buy a politician these days, you get a great return on your money. Used to be you had to put a congressman in your pocket. It might cost $1 million. You get $2 million back. Today, through Joe Barton, you can get $6 billion. So we know the oil companies have a vested interest in changing standards, as Al Weed put it, and making it hard for biodiesel fuels. What can you do at the state level? We know Congress is a mess. What can you do at the state level in Virginia to help fix these problems?
One of the things we just saw in Maryland was that the Maryland signed on with the California automobile standards, so that they pushed their state to buy more and more efficient cars. One of the problems with our transportation system is our CAFE standards have stayed the same for 2 decades.
Those are the fuel efficiency standards.
Yeah, the fuel efficiency standards. There's only 2 cars made in the United States, or that you can buy in the United States, that are over 40 miles to a gallon. In Europe, that's 113. And so we're basically the 7-Eleven Big Gulp consumer of oil in the world, and for at the state level.
Why is that? Okay, so in America, there's only 2 cars on the market. They get more than 40 miles per the gallon, and in Europe, there's 113.
Yeah, Prius.
Okay, now is there a political reason behind that?
There's a political reason. I mean, the standards, the guiding hand of government is in the back pockets, has been firmly placed in its back pocket by the oil companies and the car companies. The car companies want to have high margin vehicles coming off of the assembly lines, and the oil companies want want us to be this captive consumer of oil, and it's a good market. We've managed to fuel our country for many years on cheap oil, but now that oil has gotten more and more expensive, I think that the government, the guiding hand of government, needs to move the consumers and the automakers towards more and more efficient cars.
So what does Europe do differently? How do they get 113? What does the EU do?
They have diesels. They have smaller cars. They have diesels. They have
50% of their production is in diesel.
Now, is this required by law? Is this the European community?
We have sort of a hook here in the United States on diesels because we have this belief that they're clean. Europe has actually been able to make
diesel.
They're dirty.
They're dirty.
We think they're dirty, but they're not.
But and Europe has been able to make them much more clean through stringent standards. And
but
but
the more fundamental reason is gasoline costs $6 a gallon in Europe. Right. And it costs $2 a gallon here.
So the incentive is
incentives to have a high mileage car.
Capitalism would suggest if you're going to make a profit,
sure,
you're going to go to the more profitable things. What you're saying is because they tax gasoline higher in Europe than they do here, it's simply not profitable to make those better fuel efficient engines.
Right. Yeah, but there's another issue that goes hand in hand with that. Europe is enforcing the CO2 issues. Okay?
Carbon dioxide the thing that Al Gore keeps talking about,
right,
causing global warming.
And there's one point that Al Gore made that just negates all of the arguments against the global warming, and that is the curve he has for the CO2 that came from the ice cores.
Okay.
They got 60,000 years?
650,000.
650,000.
You've totally lost me.
No, they sampled the amount of CO2 that's in the ice cores.
Carbon dioxide, it's actually in the ice. You mean like down in Antarctica or up in the Arctic?
Right, but there's a record going back all these hundreds of thousands of years.
Gotcha.
And when you look at it, you have these excursions that people talk about. Oh, there's been a hot period in the past and so on. Well, they're all in the noise. But when you come up into the last, let's say, 50 years or so, okay, then you have an exponential curve going up. Okay? And there's no system in nature or in man that can sustain an exponential curve, one that's rising like this. Well, look what happened to the market last week, okay?
What's very interesting, and I just want to make sure I understand it, ice cores are where you drill a hole into ice really deep, and so you get almost like the rings of a tree.
Exactly.
And it shows years. So if I drill into the ice, I can drill 100 feet down and find out how it was 100 years ago if it were a feet per year. I don't know that that's what it is, but the more I drill down, I almost like going back into time.
Well, they went back into time all these hundreds of thousands of years.
To find out when the ice, and what you're saying is the carbon dioxide in the ice goes up a little, down a little, up a little.
But it's all like this.
But the last 50 years,
it goes like that.
It's shooting up.
Okay?
Right.
And that really refutes all of these arguments. Like Ann Coulter, did you hear her last?
I don't want to ever hear Ann Coulter.
She made me sick, frankly.
What the science...
Trust me, no one who is of the right mind believes anything Ann Coulter says. Go ahead, Mark.
What the science says about CO2 is that we're moving the global climate system beyond its comfort boundaries. CO2, the Earth's rays, about 1/3 of the Earth's rays warm the Earth. And we have a blanket of CO2, and that captures and is responsible for the other 2/3 of the warming. And that keeps our planet in sort of this temperate middle zone. And as we add more and more CO2, and we're way beyond the bounds of normal, we're increasing that blanket and capturing more and more of sunlight, and that's warming the Earth. What it's doing is it's shifting the global climate system, and what we're going to see is not an average warming all over the planet. It's actually going to get a little bit of warming towards the equator and a heavy amount of warming towards both poles. And there's a heck of a lot of ice at both poles, and it's starting to melt, which is causing a gradual but increasing rise in our ocean levels. And this is going to hit us here in Virginia. One of the scenes from the movie is that if we lose the ice on Greenland, and we already are, or the ice on the West Antarctic, and we already are, that the ice levels, the ice is going to add to the ocean level, and here in Virginia, it's going to a raise of a couple meters. We're going to have Chesapeake and Norfolk and Newport News and cities like that are going to be
all over the country. It's not, obviously, it's a world issue. It's not even a national issue.
Yeah, so this is going to get hit home.
I hesitate to think how New Orleans would suffer.
And Florida and that kind of thing. And so we have entered a time of consequences, and these consequences can be dealt with technology, with public policy, and with vision.
But you see, we need a program on energy conservation, CO2 reduction, on the order of magnitude of the moon program that Kennedy started.
We need people to focus on it.
Yeah, but we need a president who's going to do that type of thing.
So really, there's two benefits to what we're talking about. One is we get away from oil, which we all know where most of the oil is in the Middle East, and we have to send troops there to try to get it. So we get away from oil. That's a plus. But you're saying that these other fuels, biofuels, are actually cleaner than oil? Is that right, Al?
Well,
When you burn switchgrass, is it cleaner than when you burn oil?
Remember, he's got to turn it into...
You got to turn it into alcohol.
You perhaps should think about, when we talk about this, about the carbon cycle. When we are taking fossil fuels, coal and oil, from the ground, we are taking carbon, CO2 that's been sequestered for millennia, burning it and releasing it into the air. That's what's creating the new CO2 load.
Otherwise, it'd be down in the ground.
But when you have a closed cycle, a plant absorbs CO2 when it grows. When it burns, it puts it out. So there's no net gain in CO2.
The plant takes CO2 and gives it back, takes it and gives it back. Whereas the stuff underneath the earth will not be releasing it unless we drill deep in and bring it out.
And as a climate project, project presenter of Al Gore's slide said, what we've learned is that
which of course you were.
And I am.
Just to be clear.
And I am.
You actually worked on Inconvenient Truth.
I've gone through the training in Nashville, and what we've understood is that there are many different tactics with the technology that we already have to address this problem. One is biofuels. There's an efficiency problem. If you're driving around a 6,000-pound car or a 2,000-pound car, it's going to take more fuel, whatever kind, to move it down the road.
Right. So we still need lighter vehicles, as they have.
Lighter vehicles. We need to transition to hybrids, and then the next step beyond that is called plug-in hybrids.
Okay, but if we have lighter cars that are simply way less, how are we going to be as safe? I mean, a 6,000. My dad, when I first started driving, it was a 1978 Delta Oldsmobile 88, and this car was 2 doors and built like a tank. And my father felt when I first started driving, I could hit anything and survive. I mean, will our cars be as safe?
I saw a movie of one of those little European smart cars hit a concrete wall at 70 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour. Thing hit the wall, and then the doors could still shut. I mean, it just
the dummy was okay.
Yeah, it went clunk, came back,
so
and
this
you
can
can
be
open and
just
shut
as
the
safe,
doors.
even with lighter cars.
Absolutely.
Well, if all the cars are lighter, and it doesn't take that long to change.
Well, we still saw trucks out, right?
Well, I know, but it doesn't take that long to change the fleet. It's surprising. I think the average age of cars on the highway today is about 5 years. So if you think about that, there'll always be older, heavier vehicles, but it will turn very quickly. The thing you left out in talking about a movement to biofuels and switchgrass, you talked about the environment, and that's very, very important. You talk about the avoidance of foreign entanglements and energy independence, but you haven't talked about the massive job creation potential that this involves.
I'll tell you what, that's a very important topic. We're going to take a break. When we get back, I want to get back into jobs and the economy. Right. And is this something, because there's some that'll say, hey, capitalism, if it hasn't happened already, it must not be something that can make a lot of money. And I think you three disagree. And we're going to get to your discussions, and also to you folks, if you have a question, if you ever wanted to wonder anything about alternatives to oil, how it works, why it works, you're skeptical about any of my guests, bring it on. Toll free, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We'll be right back after this.
Some people in Fairfax County don't know what public access means.
Some think it's just another channel on the dial.
But it's much more than that.
It's the voice of the people.
People like you.
Your neighbors.
Your friends.
Or your family.
People who want to share ideas.
Opinions.
Cultures. Lifestyles.
Art.
Sports. Music.
Events.
Entertainment.
History.
science,
beliefs,
people who want to learn about television,
Producing,
directing,
cameras, audio,
lighting,
editing, or radio, talk, music.
Whatever you think people should hear.
Public access is the place where everyone has a voice.
and it's the place where that voice gets heard.
A place where you can create your own form of personal expression.
So what do you want to say?
whatever it is.
You can say it here.
Because we're public access.
For the people,
By the people.
It is about balancing our choices between the gray of the concrete jungle and the stunning beauty of the real one, between a stoic facade of granite and the fury of the canyon. It's why there's EarthShare, the simple way to find balance. EarthShare is the workplace giving program bringing the leading environmental groups under one umbrella. Support EarthShare, support them all. EarthShare. Please ask your employer about workplace giving. To learn more, visit our website.
Thousands of kids in this country have everything it takes to go to college, except the money. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
From Washington, back to the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We're discussing alternatives to oil, and we've already learned a lot. We've learned that biofuels are cheaper than oil, that they don't damage the environment, they don't create the carbon dioxide emissions that Al Gore is worried about with global warming, and that it's working in other places like Brazil and sugarcane. But some would say, and I want to ask you to all three of this question, look, we live in a capitalist country. If this thing could make a buck, all right, maybe it's good for the environment, and maybe it's, it gets us out of Iraq, but it can't be profitable, because if it were, some enterprising American would have already done it. How do you address that argument? I'm going to address it to all three of you. Let me start with you, Al.
Well, the fact is, enterprising Americans have done it. There's over 110 operating ethanol refineries in the Midwest where the corn source is most concentrated, and those are some of the most profitable investments farmers have made in the last 100 years. So the system does work. It is those, that $6 billion I talked about earlier is being invested in pilot plants that will take known technology to the commercialization stage. And that's where the government money is coming in. No entrepreneur has that much money typically to put into unproven technology, which is the issue you're facing, Andy, is that the big motor companies don't want to say, yeah, they want you to get it all done. And so what we're seeing now is
Can't they raise money in the markets through corporations? I mean, people invest in all kinds of untrue...
Well, you're right. I mean, they invest in all kinds of medical technology and gene technology and stuff like that.
What companies? Give us a boost tonight. What companies public companies can people invest in?
Oh, my goodness. My research director actually told me those companies, and I don't remember.
Tell you what, you can post it on my website later on. My website's radioinsidescoop.com, and you'll hear some companies you can invest in. Maybe I'll put some money in because I got to tell you, it not only helps our country, but heck, it may help my profits. So
well, one of the companies that got those grants, its stock went up by 40% when the rest of the market was going down, so there was some interest in it.
Let me go to a caller. We've got Mike in Northern Virginia. Mike, welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Welcome, Mark. My comment is made to Mr. Weed because he's in Virginia. I'm in Northern Virginia. I've driven for 10 years all over Northern Virginia as a bank courier for all the various banks. So I've been in and out of traffic, whether it's I-66 or all the local traffic. But I'll tell you, Northern Virginia always been squabbling about what I would say transportability. I have to use that transportability. There are not enough of buses, not enough of bus drivers, which reduces the number of people that need to use their cars, number one. Number two, I've driven a Honda for many, many years, and then went to a Toyota, four-cylinder Toyota. The people say, why do you get a small car? It's dangerous on the road. Probably so. But in today's television, it showed a small car, that hit a wall, and the doors did not open. But on the big cars, they have these bags, and those bags open up, and my brother had suffered, he had a Lincoln, and he says, As soon as this woman hit him on the side of the car, off went the bags. But he says he's given up on big cars only because they're dangerous and they're expensive to operate. Gasoline is very, very expensive. That's all I can
Mike, thank you for your call. Let me address this to Morris, because I think these are both public policy issues. One is public transportation. What if you're elected this fall? What can you do to increase public transportation? And the other question goes to the safety of cars.
Very quickly, we haven't had a transportation bill in over a generation in Virginia, and we've starved essentially our transportation system. And recently this latest transportation bill will starve off $200 million from general funds. And essentially, it tells Northern Virginians, if you want to invest in public transportation or other roadways, that we have to raise our property taxes to do it. I think I would support Governor Kane's plan of $1 billion in sustaining and recurring investment in transportation.
And is there public transportation here just to deal with Mike's question?
Yeah, and I think
it's not just more highways for our cars.
Exactly. I think we need to
buses, metro.
We need to take Metro out to Manassas and to Dulles. I think we need a system of light rail. We need to have bus rapid transit at the edges, so we have a seamless transportation system across D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And these are the kind of things that that investing in our infrastructure, because we're the economy that sends 3/4 of our tax dollars downstate. Investing in this infrastructure so we can grow is a wise move.
Okay, and real quickly to address this question about safety, Andy, you agree with Morris's assessment that a small car can be made as safe as or even safer than a big car?
Oh yeah.
It's not, size doesn't matter, in other words.
No.
Okay. Let me go to another caller. We've got a different Mike from Alexandria. Mike, welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Thank you. Good show. Great show.
You.
You're really getting at it. I haven't heard from Andy what kind of fuel mileage improvement he thinks his combustion system can deliver.
Great question. Andy? What can I do? I get 20 now.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Keller.
Oh, you know the caller. Terrific. Well, answer the question. He's on your board, or?
He's our Director of Business Development.
Terrific. Well, that answers
that's a good question. I mean, we're wrapped up in all these things. For instance, we've demonstrated in this DARPA program that what I forgot to mention also, that this is a sparkless combustion process.
Right. No, you mentioned
right.
it. Yeah.
Okay, I did. But what this process does is improve the fuel consumption such that in this DARPA program, we had approximately a 30% reduction. Okay. The important thing is that type of reduction is possible from idle to the highway speed. Your car, when you're driving...
My car, when I'm driving fast, it does better than when I'm driving slow.
Sure, because you have a vacuum pump, okay? You have a throttle plate that closes. The engine is running as a vacuum pump.
You can get highway mileage plus 30% in your engine.
You've got to be careful of that.
Okay.
Actually, in the DARPA program, that is correct.
You can actually get highway mileage plus 30%.
Is that factoring in the decreased weight of the engine as well, or is that just
No.
Based?
That's
based on
numbers.
the standard engine.
That's
so you
just
get
numbers.
a decreased engine, you can do even better. Decreased engine weight.
Decreased engine weight. So
it's
possible to run a gasoline engine,
right,
not a lot of diesel, with very much the same kind of fuel efficiency that a diesel has. Okay, but across the entire engine range, from idle right up to highway speed, getting that kind of fuel consumption. Think about what that means in terms of a national economy. It takes time to develop all these things and get all the cars and doing this type of thing.
Think about all those jobs and the people creating the new technology, working in assembly lines, and they're American jobs, right?
Yeah.
Because we would develop the technology here, we wouldn't have to ship it overseas. Yeah. In fact, if we don't develop it here, we probably will end up shipping it on overseas because Europeans or people in India or China might just work on it first. Let me ask you this. You were telling me in the break that our current engine, the catalytic converter and everything, is the dirtiest it could possibly be?
No, in terms of CO2.
In terms of carbon dioxide?
Yeah.
It produces the maximum amount it could?
Absolutely.
How is that?
Well, because the catalytic converter is has a three-way process. Mm-hmm. It reduces the hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, and NOx. In order for that to happen, you have to have the curves coincide and cross And the crossing point is what's called at the perfect mixing point of air and fuel. That's called the stoichiometric point. Okay? When you look at the emissions, all of them, including CO2, you find that you have the maximum production of CO2 right at that point.
So right at the point where our engine is designed is the maximum level of carbon dioxide.
And when the government's mandated that you have to use this kind of technology, that killed all of the
alternatives that could be.
Well, the alternative was a process that burns with a lot more air. Okay. So there's a higher air-fuel ratio, okay? And there, you can reduce the oxide of nitrogen, you can reduce the CO2.
So the government is requiring this standard right now.
Right. Oh yeah, pretty much across the
board. So
board.
Marsh, can we change that? I mean, can we go into government, federal or state, and change this?
We can. I think one of the things with technology, you can have a plug-in hybrid or a regular hybrid that only uses the engine at its efficiency point, for 10% of the time you're driving it. So you're running it at higher RPMs, but it's only charging the car instead of driving the wheels.
Again, why aren't companies doing this? I mean, I remember when California developed electric cell cars, and they required 1 or 2% of the fleet going up to 5% to do it, and California often leads the way in trends, and then nobody followed. Virginia didn't follow, Maryland didn't follow, and the whole thing kind of died.
There's really not that urgency. I mean, we have gas, we have oil, we have the car, we have the network of the car systems, we have current technology, and until there's enough pain from either public pressure, public policy, or public awareness, that system is not going to get changed towards more efficient direction. You have the Prius. That's the hybrids are about 2% of the road fleet now, and I think we need to have that sort of the guiding hand of government needs to get out there in the market and move our automakers towards newer technology. The DOE has a 15-year program to transition from regular cars to hybrids to plug-in hybrids, and
Brazil did it in what, 2 years?
It's far too long.
Al, what about the point that Morris made earlier about food production? Obviously, we need farmers for food. Do we have enough land to do both food and this oil?
Well,
this fuel?
Just look at the Mid-South that we're sort of in the center of. For the last 15 or 20 years, there's been a lot of good cropland converted to long-term low-volley plowing, which is really a very low return, but it's better than anything else on the market. So when we look at the available cropland in Virginia as a basis for this kind of new rural economy, there is more than enough. But nationwide, there's an interesting piece of data. There's 30 million acres in the Conservation Reserve Program. That's land that is set aside for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's erodible and fragile land, but 30 million acres set aside. If we make 1,000 gallons of ethanol per acre, that's the 30 billion gallons of ethanol the president is calling from, without taking 1 acre out of food production.
That's amazing. Now, Al, you're running public policy in Virginia. You're working to help make this happen. Morris, you're giving a speech about this real soon.
I'm giving the Climate Project presentation at GMU on Wednesday at
George Mason
University at 8 p.m. You can go to www.morrismeyer.com, my website, and we'll have directions. And I'm giving the slide set that talks about the science and the solutions behind Al Gore's
and Andy, of course, is continuing to work on his inventions. Folks, you can get more information. Go to radioinsidescoop.com. We're going to publish more of what these folks are doing. They are on the cusp of change, and it is possible. And if you don't believe it, just listen to the show. That's all for the Inside Scoop. This is Mark Levine signing off.
I'm chasing a shadow.